I'm actually going to record my April roundup on like May 2nd. What? We'll see how long it takes me to actually get it to you, but... Hi. So I'm going to record my April roundup today and talk about the books that I read in April and the things that I knit in April. And it's actually April 2nd. I'm not recording this halfway through the month. Tell me you're impressed. Now, one thing I will say is I'm going to show you photos of most of the hats that I knit. I knit 3 hats in April, and I only know where 2 of them are. So that's a thing. One of them you've already seen. It's the Jughead hat. I've been wearing it in the last couple of videos I've done. I wore it yesterday, and today I can't find it. It's probably like in my, oh, it is in my laundry. I just remembered. I put it in to be hand washed because I made brownies and I got brownie batter on it. So it's currently downstairs waiting to be washed. But I'll show you a picture of it. Whoop, whoop. It's the first thing I finished in April, was my Jughead hat. There's a whole video about it, which I'll link below. People always say that I'll link below present tense, but for future tense, but really it's which I have linked below, which is linked below. Yeah, Jughead hat. There's a whole video about it. About the steps of how to do it, because when it comes to the points, I did those a little bit differently than I've seen in other Jughead hat patterns, intentionally different. The pattern is free. It's on my website, stitchandwitch.com. It's also on Ravelry, and the video kind of walks you through the majority of it anyway, with a few less details than the pattern has, but so that you can visualize it. So yeah, Jughead hat was the first thing I finished in April. I knit it with Peace Fleece in Rabbit Gray. I love how it came out. I'm wearing it almost every day. Almost every day. I finished, like I said, 3 hats in April, and I finished 1 sweater, which we'll get to last. My second hat that I finished in April, I also don't know where it is. So here's what happens. I knit a lot of hats. I wear a lot of hats. And what happens is I knit them, I wear them, and then there's like always a hat in each bag and a hat in each jacket, and hats shoved in like the headboard of my bed because I wear them into the bedroom, and then I end up taking them off if I lay down. They're just kind of everywhere. And I honestly don't know where I put this one, but hopefully I have a photo that I can show. Editing Katrina here. I never found the hat, and I don't have a picture of it. I'm wondering if it actually exists. This is the leftover Witch yarn from Fiber Seed. I did another hat with that a long time ago. It was a test knit for Corrado Lark. It's a gorgeous pattern. I absolutely love how it came out. It is, up until making my Jughead hat, it was the hat I wore most often. Now it's probably in line with my Jughead hat because I wear that a lot. So I used what I had left of that, which was a really small ball I had left of that, and I did every other row with Wool in the Gang Alpaca, which is super soft and very smushy. It has like a really interesting drape to it. It's very smooth. It's very drapey. So I did that one. And then the third hat I did, which I have not done the final end on yet, but I will, is this hat, which is a whole bunch of kinds of acrylic that I had. I want to say this purple might actually be wool. I'm not positive. It's something that was given to me by somebody at my Universalist Unitarian church that I go to make hats for our church, for a church charity event we were doing. And then that was just like a leftover little tiny ball I had of it. So this is a Helix knit like I did in January. I just kind of am addicted to these Helix knit hats. I think the child of hoarders in me really likes to use things up and make them go away. So the combination of the ease with which a Helix knit hat comes out, like this took me a day and a half, and I was only kind of half working on it. I was also working on another project, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but that one's a secret project. But this one, it took me a day and a half, and it used up 4 balls of yarn almost entirely. I think the pink I have just a little bit left of, which is going to go into a project that I started this month, or started in the month of April. But yeah, that ease with which they knit up so quickly, the Helix knit hats, and they use up yarn that's like leftovers, and I love to use things up and throw them away. I think I'm probably giving this one to my mother-in-law, so if she's watching, Ma, this is for you, because this is her colors, like completely. I was halfway through knitting. I just kind of picked out a bunch of colors that I liked that went well together, and I was halfway through knitting it, and I looked at my wife and I went, oh, I think I'm knitting this for your mother, because these are her colors. Like, she loves these colors. If I had included teal, this would be perfect for her. But yeah, that's that hat right there. I do these all the time. I do them top down. I cast on 3 stitches, push them to the end of the needle like you would for an I-cord, knit front and back around so that then you have 6 stitches. And I join it in the round at that point. And then I increase by 6 stitches every other row until I have 66 stitches on my needles. This is with worsted weight, size 8 needles. That's how much of an art I have this down to. I might have used size 9 on this one. It feels a little bit bigger. I feel like I maybe used size 9 because my 8s were caught up in a sweater I was finishing up. But yeah, so it's a, I mean, I have this one down. Like I do it second nature. So it goes from the top down. I did a 3-1 ribbing at the bottom. I used up the white and the darker, this like dark mauve color. I used up completely. The pink and the purple I used up almost completely. I think I had like not even a yard of that left. And then the pink I have just a little ball left of that's going to go into a blanket I started. So those are the 3 hats that I knit in April. And then, okay, so I technically finished this sweater on May 1st. But I talked to my friend Jessie and she gave me permission to use it, to include it in the April roundup, because I don't want to talk about this sweater next month, because I've been talking about this sweater since January. I finally finished my flax sweater. So I started this in January. I've talked about it on other videos. It was one that I cast on and frogged, I think. It does not look good with this t-shirt under it, but whatever. I cast it on and frogged it, I think 7 times, trying to decide what pattern I was going to use this yarn for. And I ended up with the flax, and honestly, I could not be happier with it. I did the garter stitch pattern down the sleeves. I love that it has that kind of little extra something that makes it not just a stockinette sweater. It fits me perfectly. I have not blocked it yet. When I do, I might stretch it down a little bit, see if I can block it into just a slightly longer sweater, because it is really common for me to wear a sweater like this over leggings when I go to my nanny jobs. So this fall, when I am wearing this to work, that's probably going to be its like primary purpose, is pair it over leggings so that I'm warm on a playground. Let's see if we can get like I can't go backwards, so I've got a table behind me that I'm sorting a bunch of yarn onto, so I can't go as far backwards as I normally would. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So that, now I'm super far away, but that is my flax in Brown Sheep Company. Can the camera even hear me? Brown Sheep Company in something green. Oh, Lamb's Pride worsted from Brown Sheep Company in Pine Shadows. So it's 85% wool, 15% mohair. I think my dog's allergic to the mohair. Every time that I was working on it and she got close to me, she would start sneezing. Every time I was working on it and she got close to me, she would start sneezing. So I'm pretty sure my dog's allergic to this sweater, but I could not be happier with how it came out. I'm so pleased with this sweater. I think it's going to be really lovely to wear this fall. Very happy with it. But it is April, it is May, it is too warm to wear it right now. Okay, so 3 hats and a sweater. That's what I finished in the month of April. Now, what did I start in the month of April? I started a project that's a secret for now. because the friend that I'm making it for definitely watches these videos. But we'll say it's a pattern I've done before. I loved it. I've raved about it on this channel. It's a really well written pattern. It's very complex pattern. So I needed a project that wouldn't be quite so complex. So I went through, again, I love to use up scraps of yarn. I went through my yarn and I made this kind of rainbow, which I didn't bring upstairs with me. I'll post the picture of it. So I set out kind of a rainbow in a square shape on my floor, and then I took a photo of it so that I can remember what order I had the colors in, and I moved things around until I found the right color. And what I'm going to do is a metered square blanket, just a little, like maybe baby blanket or lap Afghan, nothing huge, that's going to be like a gradient rainbow, red at one corner down to purple at the opposite corner, and then it'll be kind of yellow and green through the center. And that's really just to use up a bunch of my acrylic little balls that I have. I've talked before about the fact that when a friend loses a loved one or is helping somebody clean out their attic and they find a bunch of yarn, they often give it to me, which I'm endlessly grateful for because it keeps me knitting. But also I end up with a lot of little leftover balls that like somebody's long lost grandmother had made half of a hat with, and then the rest of the ball is just sitting there, or had made a hat with and the rest of the ball is just sitting there. This is for me to use up those. And it's also my meditation knit. The fact that I need a project that doesn't require me to think. So this secret project that I'm working on requires me to think. It's very focused. And I needed a project that wouldn't do that. So I started this metered square blanket that's just kind of my brainless meditation. My meditation project. So there's that. I've shut my notebook. What was I thinking? So that's the project I started, or I started a couple of projects. I have also started a pair of yoga socks, which I'm doing in this Loops and Threads in Atlantic City color. And it is an acrylic and bamboo yarn, which is very different feeling. I like it. It's really soft. I just kind of, I cast on the amount I normally would for a pair of socks, which for me is on my size 1 needles, 60 stitches. That's my usual. So I cast on that 60 stitches. I attempted to make it so my stripes will match, and I've quickly realized that they're still not going to match. And honestly, I don't care enough to make them match. Actually, a lot of times I'd rather my stripes don't match, completely don't match, so that I don't get neurotic about like one line of one row not matching, or I get halfway through the skein and I find a knot of where it was cut at the factory, and then I get mad. So I tend to do that. So I cast on the 60. I found this Leaves and Vines cable stitch on Pinterest that I'm gonna put up the front of them. They're just for me to use in the mornings when I do my morning yoga. I have hardwood floors. My feet tend to be cold, but I can't wear full socks because yoga, downward dog, you'll fall on your face. So yeah, I have my secret project, my yoga socks that I'm working on, my metered square blanket that I'm working on. I'm still trying to figure out what pattern to do for my wife for a vest. If anybody has any patterns they love for a plus size vest, let me know. She really wants something cabled, which would be great, except the yarn I have is really not easy to work with. The yarn that I've chosen for her for this project is not easy to work with. It's really slippery, and I feel like if I do cables with it, I'm just gonna end up frustrated. So I'd really rather not do cables on this one. I'll do cables on a future vest for her, but on this one I don't want to do cables. Honestly, I feel like I might just end up doing a flax. Like that might be my default when I can't decide on a pattern. I just go back to Tinkin. It's flax pattern. So that's everything knitting related. I did pick back up my embroidery project that I started in December or maybe November. or maybe it was, I don't know, it was a long time ago. I picked that back up, and I've got it by the bed, and I did a couple stitches on it. It's hard for me to work on that particular project because we have one cat who's very unpredictable, and I'm always so afraid that I'm going to stab her with a needle. Because I do a lot of crafting in bed and on the couch, and in those two places, she will come out of nowhere and jump into my lap. And so I try to not do pokey things because I'm really afraid I'm going to stab her one day. So there's that. And then books. Let's talk about what I read in April. I read 6 books in April. I started with Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I've read quite a few Diana Wynne Jones books in the past. If you are a fan of Harry Potter and not a fan of She Who Shall Not Be Named, Diana Wynne Jones is a great place to go. Honestly, I think Diana Wynne Jones probably influenced the Harry Potter books in a lot of ways. My wife actually introduced me to her, but then I was halfway through one of the books, or I guess she reintroduced me to her because I was halfway through one of the books that my wife said, hey, you should read this book by Diana Wynne Jones. I was halfway through it when I realized I'd already read it, but I'd read it when I was really little and I'd completely forgotten. So yeah, Diana Wynne Jones writes a lot of like magical stuff, but she wrote Howl's Moving Castle, which the Miyazaki film is based on. I have mixed feelings about this book. I found it very comforting, very calming, very easy to read. The premise is the same as the movie. A young girl who gets kind of tricked by a witch and gets turned into an old lady and ends up in the castle of a wizard who can move his castle all over the place, and it's powered by a sentient ball of fire. So that's Howl's Moving Castle in a nutshell. And the book is very much that. I feel like this book is hard to read in long sittings, but if you were reading a chapter a night to children who are really into this, like I thought of when I was little and my mother read the Narnia books to us, a chapter a night for a long time until we made our way through the Narnia books. This seems like the perfect book for that. Like if you're looking for a book to read to a particularly magically enthusiastic 5 or 6 year old, 7, 8 year old, there may be parts they don't care about so much, but this would be really great for that kind of setting. For just sitting and reading it right now, it was really good for me. There are definitely times in my life I would have found it boring and I would have just said the movie is better. And I've heard other book reviewers say that as well after finishing it. I don't like to look at book reviews as much right as I'm about to read something. If it's a while ahead, I'll usually forget what I read anyway. But if I'm about to read something, I tend to avoid the reviews because I don't want to be influenced by them. But after finishing it, I did kind of look through a couple of reviews and I watched a couple of booktubers talking about it. And they kind of all had the same feeling that the movie was great fodder. I mean, the book was great fodder for an amazing movie. But they took the best things out of the book to make the movie, and once you take those best things out of the book, you aren't left with much, unfortunately. Still, though, I mean, I thought it was really good. I liked it. I'm not really big on star ratings. They frustrate me, but I guess if forced to, I would probably give it like 3.5 stars. Like, I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed the process of reading it. Probably won't read it again, but I enjoyed it. I would give it to certain people in my life, though, to read and be like, I know you would like this book. I've been kind of, over the years, making my way through Clara Parks' books. I listened to her podcast and just kind of slowly been making my way through her books. I read Vanishing Fleece, Adventures in American Wool by her. I did this one as an audiobook, and she reads it herself. And it was really fascinating. I think a lot about fast fashion and about where our clothing is coming from in this country. And a lot of this had to do with that. A lot of this had to do with where our yarn is coming from, which I find really interesting. And I think that we as knitters don't think about that nearly enough. So I like that. It's really interesting. Like it's basically like her experience making her way through the process of going from sheep to wool with a bunch of wool, but in the process learning about how this process works. How many times have I just said the word process? But in the time that she's doing this, she's learning about how this works in America specifically, and what has changed over the years with America with that. I read Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty by Anderson Cooper. So if you don't know, Anderson Cooper is a descendant of the Vanderbilts. His mother was a Vanderbilt, like kind of the last Vanderbilt, really. And he wrote this book about how the Vanderbilts built their fortune and then spent their fortune and how that worked. I mean, the title kind of gives that away, right? But it's really good if you are into the Gilded Age. That's kind of what made me want to read this book, actually. And then I was on a waiting list. This was another audiobook. So Vanishing, Fleece, and Vanderbilt I did as audiobooks. Those were my 2 audiobooks I read this month. This one is read by Anderson Cooper, and it is really fascinating from the perspective of the Gilded Age. It actually made some things in the Gilded Age make more sense to me. Things I didn't know about the history of kind of that culture. So Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty by Anderson Cooper. I really liked this book a lot, and I've suggested it to quite a few people already that I know specifically will like this book. I read the Knitgrrl Guide to Professional Knitwear Design by Shannon and Okey. I've been working on submitting some designs to some places. Basically my idea is I'm going to come up with my designs. I'm going to submit them somewhere. If they don't get published by that organization or that magazine or whatever, I'm going to self-publish them. So I didn't submit the Jughead Hat anywhere because I knew I was going to be doing that pattern for free, but I have a couple of others coming up that will be kind of the result of that if they are not picked up by the magazines I've submitted them to. So the Knitgrrl Guide to Professional Knitwear Design is basically just a breakdown of that process of how to be a knitwear designer. It's a very 101 kind of book. I found that because I'm already a published writer, a lot of it kind of carries over. Like I knew the copyright stuff, like that's kind of all the same. So a lot of it I kind of already knew because of that. But if you're brand new to knitwear design, or if you're brand new to the publishing world, that book is fantastic. I finished Sexual Politics by Kate Millett. I don't have a lot to say about this one. If you're not into heavy feminist theory, this is not for you. It's an examination of some various works of literature in America. It's an examination of them through the feminist theory lens. It's heavy. And I've been working on it since January. So it's heavy and it took me a long time. But it was good. From me and my interests, I enjoyed it. But that's not one that I feel like, it's a very niche topic. Let's say that. And then the last book I finished in April was Hour of the Witch by Chris. I always say his last name wrong. I want to say Bohjlian? Chris, who's written a lot of really amazing books, and I've read many of them and I own most of them. Hour of the Witch. This was an impulse. Like I was on my library account ordering some books and it popped up and I was like, oh, I hadn't heard of that one, and I requested it immediately. And it was really good. It was really good. Probably, I don't know, I really liked Vanishing Fleece, but it might be my favorite book of the month that I read. Hour of the Witch is the 17th century Boston. A young woman who's married to a very abusive man decides in the first couple, I don't want to give spoilers, so I'm trying to figure out how to say this without giving spoilers. She decides to divorce him. Yeah, she decides to divorce him because of the abuse, which of course in that time is a very difficult thing for a woman to do. Very difficult thing for anybody to do, but especially a woman. And it's the process of the trial she goes through to attempt to divorce him, and then how that makes her a suspected witch. I don't want to give any more than that, but it really was really good. Even up to the very end, I was like, there has to be something that's about to happen here, and I did not quite expect it to go the way it did in the end. So the twist at the end did kind of get me a little bit. I knew something was going to happen, but I had not pinpointed exactly what. And I was very surprised by who turned out to kind of be the hero of the story. So yeah, it's really good. The Hour of the Witch, Chris Bohjlian. The only thing that caught me up a little bit in it is the dialogue is done very true to the era. So a lot of these and thous and ye's, and I find that really hard to read sometimes. I find that hard to read, but I mean, it was fitting, but I find it hard to read. And the one thing that I do want to mention about it, from a trigger warning perspective, is although it is about an abusive man and some of that abuse is depicted, I felt as a victim of abuse, I felt that it was really well done. It wasn't like watching Outlander. Like, I wasn't seeing the abuse in the same way, except for one pinnacle scene that was a little bit icky. Or maybe I just imagined it too vividly, I don't know. But I wasn't seeing it in quite the same way that you do, like, the rape scenes in Outlander. This was it was more suggestively done so that it wasn't too much, I guess. More suggestively done so it wasn't too much. So I really appreciated that. Having read a lot of books where, like, the woman's strength comes from the abuse she suffers. That was good. Oh, there was one other thing. So I had an issue with this main character, who I've already forgotten her name. I want to say it's Mary. That seems too obvious, but that might have been her name. But I had an issue with the main character. It's all told from her perspective, so I don't hear her name very often. I didn't understand why everyone in Boston seemed to understand the things she was doing that would make her a suspected witch, except for her. And I get that, like, if you know you are something, it's harder to imagine that other people see you as something else, right? I get that. That's a thing. But in a time of witch hunts, where news is coming out of Salem, they know what's happening in the surrounding small towns around Boston. Why did this one very well educated, upper middle class woman not get that the things she was doing would make her a suspected witch? And everyone else got it. Everyone else is saying to her all the time, like, oh, don't do that. Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. That's going to make people think things. That's going to make people wonder. And she did not see it. That drove me crazy the whole time. I was like, what? How do you not understand that the things you're doing are... Anyway, that was my one qualm with it. I think that was the one reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, honestly. I feel like if you're going to do that, justify it. Like, yeah, okay, it is believable that she didn't think that she was going to be suspected because, like I said, when you know who you are, it's hard to see that other people don't see you for who you are. Don't see you exactly for who you are. Like, I get that, but it still bothered me how long it took. And then all of a sudden, like, she suddenly gets it. I don't know, it just bothered me how long it took for her to get it. She should have understood this a lot sooner in the narrative, I felt like. So that's everything I have for April. I can't believe I recorded this on time. Let's see if I can edit it on time. It'll all depend on whether or not I find that one hat, but we'll see. So anyway, what are you working on? Let me know. Tell me if you knit the Jughead hat. I know I said this in the Jughead hat video too, but tell me if you knit the Jughead hat. I'd love to see what you are doing with that pattern. I'm going to, by the time this video comes out, I'll also have a Star Wars pattern out because I'm recording this on the 2nd, and so I'm trying to get it out by May the 4th. May the 4th, right? Which is, it's the same pattern I had on my blog years ago. I just hadn't officially released a PDF of it on Ravelry and on my website. So I'm attempting to put that up today. And that's also a free pattern, and I'd love to see what people do with that one as well. Otherwise, that's everything I have. Have a great day. Go make something fun. Follow, like, oh, the Patreon stuff, right? as I release more and more patterns, my goal is to actually get into a steady schedule of releasing patterns, but I can't do that without the financial support. As much as I hate that, we know how I feel about consumerism. That's how it works. So go join me over on Patreon. I kind of do it like I heard somebody recently use this phrase for Patreon and I liked it. I kind of do it like a sliding scale thing. I'm about to revamp my Patreon stuff, and when I do, I'll let everybody know. But I do kind of do it on a sliding scale thing where there aren't huge benefits to it. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the people who support you on Patreon are going to support you whether they get anything out of it or not. And 9 times out of 10, they support you and don't take advantage of the benefits. That's what I've learned. So I'd rather you join me over there because you want the regular updates about what I'm doing and because you want to support my work and not feel like somebody else is getting left out because they can't afford to. Because I was the kid who couldn't afford to for a really long time. So that's kind of how I'm revamping Patreon. I finally decided. I know I've made a few videos talking about Patreon and my issues with it. I finally figured it out thanks to watching a couple videos of some other creators, Megan Black and a few others, who had some interesting thoughts on it. So anyway, that's everything I have for you. Go make something fun. Have a great day. I hope you're enjoying the weather or something. These outros really are awkward. Okay, bye.